Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Ms. Lewis a brief question, but before I do that, I'd like to make a statement which comes, I believe, from a slightly different perspective than many of my colleagues. Mr. Chairman, to be very honest with you, I find myself uncomfortable about these hearings, and I'll tell you why. I think, in fact, that these hearings are extremely partisan, and I say this as an independent who has run on many occasions against Democrats as well as Republicans. I think that the main function of this hearing is to do political damage to the President of the United States, and I think that one has got to be naive to believe otherwise. I very much appreciate the three witnesses we have before us today coming here and giving us their point of view, and I thank them for coming, and I do realize that it does take courage and it is not an easy thing to do. I do believe, however, that it would have been fairer, less partisan, and more productive if we could have heard from those people who have been accused of wrongdoing at the same time, so that we could have better weighed the pros and cons of the charges being leveled by our witnesses today. Also, I am very pleased that all of the charges raised by Ms. Lewis and the others, as Ms. Lewis has acknowledged earlier today, are currently under investigation by special counsel, as they should be. And I look forward to the completion of that investigation. Clearly, anyone who has violated the law, as alleged, should be punished, and I look forward to the legal system proceeding as it should. But, Mr. Chairman, let me tell you what bothers me, and I think bothers many other people around the country who are not necessarily partisan Republicans or partisan Democrats. And to make that point, Mr. Chairman, let me quote, if I might, a statement that you made yesterday as reported in today's Washington Post, and I quote, this is from the chairman, quote, "The White House has contended that it supports a progressive environmental policy, yet documents the committee is releasing this week demonstrate that in two instances, the Clinton administration in Little Rock opted to assist Madison-connected developers at the expense of concern for clean water and proper sewage disposal," end of quote. Did Governor Bill Clinton in the 1980s run an environmentally conscious administration in Arkansas? That is a very interesting question, but I can think of 100 questions that are far more interesting to the people of America than Clinton's environmental policy in Arkansas in the mid-1980s. Among others, I can think of is how the Republican legislation on the environment just a few weeks ago is going to impact upon millions of Americans. Mr. Chairman, you stated yesterday, and I quote, "The White House has contended that the 1980s were hallmarked by a breakdown in business and social values symbolized by the greed of the investment banker Michael Milliken. The irony is that the picture this committee will be presented this week is of a state of political elite, of a state political elite steeped in a Milliken-like deal-making ethos," end of quote. Is that correct? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Frankly, I don't know about political elites in Arkansas in the mid-1980s, but I do know that on this committee and on every committee in Congress today, enormous pressure has been placed on us by a very powerful elite composed of the reigning financial interests and the big money interests of this country. And I can tell you that that political elite this year has been very successful in getting huge tax breaks for the rich and large corporations while cutting back on Medicare and Medicaid and student loans and nutrition programs and so forth and so on. Political elite today, very important to the people of America today. Mr. Chairman, the reason that I raise this issue is that Ms. Lewis, in her written testimony, refers to allegations that Madison Guarantee Funds may have been illegally transferred into the Clinton Political Committee Fund in 1985. It is my understanding that this allegation is being investigated as it should, and we must learn if anything improper was done. But, Mr. Chairman, as interesting as that may be, I find it more interesting that between 1993 and 1994, individuals and PACs with interest overseen by this committee contributed well over $1 million to the campaign funds of members of this committee. And this type of campaign funding takes place on every committee in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. Huge amounts of corporate funding has flooded this Congress in recent years, and most especially in the last few months when our Republican friends took power. In fact, in one night, the Republican Party raised $11 million from the wealthy and corporate interest in one night. Mr. Chairman, I am concerned about how Governor Bill Clinton raised his political contributions in 1985, but frankly, I am more concerned about the role of big money in Congress today in 1995. Therefore, what I would respectfully request of you is not 5 days of hearings, but 1 day hearing to bring before us the representatives of the big financial interest in America, the banks and the insurance companies, so that we could ask them why they are contributing hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to members of this committee and to the Republican and Democratic Party. What do they want? Why are they contributing that money? All I want is a 1 day hearing, Mr. Chairman.